Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Loh. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. And
Thank you.
I just want to clarify a few thoughts in my mind. We have heard quite a lot about, not just from you, but from other witnesses on, the issue of freedom of speech and so on and so forth. And it is also something that is of great concern to us on the committee. So Minister Shanmugam and I think a number of us on the committee have expressed that we are looking at facts and not opinions. And certainly you agreed that should be the correct approach that we should take, looking at facts rather than opinion.
I think who determines the facts? Because from my work, I know that sometimes the facts are not facts, and it comes from the government, and therefore we have to accept it.
Okay, so assume that there is no dispute as to facts. I mean, conceptually, we should be looking at facts and not targeting differing opinions.
I think that is, broadly, I would not have any problem with that. But in practice, there is always, and like Ms. Kirsten Han was saying yesterday, sometimes we try to get the facts, but there's a roadblock. There's a wall that is put up. And when we are unable to get the facts and go ahead with the story, we are then, accused of propagating falsehood. And that is a real problem for us, and that I hope the government will understand, and that we are not troublemakers. I've been around for more than 10 years. I don't hide, I'm not anonymous, right? When I started TOC in 2006, the very first thing I told my team was, we are not going to use pseudonyms. And that was very popular at that time because people were frightened, right? And we came out and we said, we are not going to use pseudonyms. Why? Because we are Singaporeans, right? And at the time, I know that the mainstream media at least, was demonizing us, sort of like painting us as perhaps unpatriotic. And therefore, when I started the website, I wanted to make a statement, and that's why I used the word online citizen, that although we are online, we are still citizens of Singapore. So we are all here and we are not hiding, right?
Yeah,
so, but when you engage, right, you bring people in and people see the other side of the story, the other side of the issue, and people understand better, right? And perhaps then they might not be so, critical or so one-sided.
Yeah, I think indeed your stepping forward shows that you care enough to talk about all these issues openly. Of course, I'm not a journalist myself. As a lawyer, typically, if we have only partial information or a partial, and we would qualify our, any opinion by saying this is what we know, this is not what we're not able to get, and this is what we heard.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how journalists do it, but I think that the fact that you started using your real names and not pseudonyms was a very, very big step. And here's where I would like to seek clarification from you, because I also have many people I know who are extremely critical of the government, and they post, their views very openly on the websites, or their Facebook posts, yes. Right? So I'm trying to understand what we understand by freedom of speech and where we think the constraints should be, because the fact that many of us are able to openly post views that are critical of the government means that there is some latitude to exercise that freedom. So can you share with us where you think, that, I don't think you're saying there's no freedom, but basically you're saying that there are certain unnecessary factors. So is that what you're trying to say? And that we should not add on anymore?
Yes. That's what I'm trying to say.
So basically the point is that there is freedom of speech, but it is not as boundless as we would want it to be.
I think it's not in dispute that freedom of speech in Singapore has been curtailed and it's not as free as in many other countries.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah, I understand
Yes.
that. So I'm just trying to understand where the limits. What are the limits that you see? Because we have also heard other witnesses who agree that freedom of speech cannot be absolute,
Yes.
and that it's always balanced against the public good.
Yes.
So the exercise of my right, as one judge says, I can swing my arm as far as I want, but I have to stop short of somebody's nose.
Yes.
So the exercise of my right has got to be circumscribed in that manner, right?
Yes.
So therefore, when it comes to coming back again to the issue of deliberate falsehoods, what we are trying to do is to say that those have got to be addressed, and perhaps also not just a falsehood per se, but looking at the consequences
Yes.
that those falsehoods might give rise to. So I think many of us have agreed that when it comes to national security or religious, racial issues, there has got to be some circumspect behavior and responsibility in
Yes.
those. So you agree with that as well?
Yes, I agree with that. But I think the real issue here is threshold. What is the threshold that the government is willing to accept to allow people to debate?
Yeah.
And for example, I think this idea that religion or race cannot or should not be debated openly, I'm not sure if that is the government's position, actually, but there seems to be this idea, among not a few Singaporeans, I would say, that as long as it has to do with race or religion, we should not talk about it. And I think that is very unfortunate because I think we should talk about it.
Indeed, I can't speak for the rest of my panelists, but I have also openly stated that we should discuss such issues because it helps us to strengthen our social cohesion. But again, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. So I'm just coming back now to the point of, using real names and anonymity in posting comments and writing posts, for example. Why do you think that it is no longer a cover for those with ill intent?
Simply because nobody can hide. And when I started TOC and throughout the years, I've always told people that, you can't hide. If you do something really bad, the government will find you. Period.
I can't speak for the government, but okay. The reason why I ask is because also there have been views that when people put their real name to it, there is a greater sense of accountability, and also more moderation in that I become more responsible for what I say. Whereas if we don't and we allow anonymity, that there are those then who will just be vitriolic or do whatever, say whatever they want. So I don't want to hear your view on this because you said that it's no longer a cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think anonymity has a role. I'm not a big fan of it generally, but I think it has a role because I have worked with people who have to be anonymous in order to give me information, you see? So I know, it's like this broad brush that people use and say anonymity is a bad thing and all, but it is not.
No, I think I'm using it in the context of public discourse. Yeah. So when
I think with social media nowadays, very few people are anonymous except bots and perhaps, people with ill intentions.
Does the TOC allow anonymous comments?
Now?
Then and now?
In the
or
past,
any
yes.
other?
Yes. Comments, yes. Articles, by and large, no.
Now
Yeah.
too, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, do you agree with? Do you agree that maybe we should? Okay, so I'll just move away from that point. But now coming back to the issue of whether we should look at consequences of what we say in the light of what you said about the importance of having intention and proving malicious intent. I'm not sure if you were here, but I asked the previous witness, what if someone said something was racially inflammatory without any, malicious intent?
I think, like I said, it's a question of threshold. And I think the government has a different threshold than perhaps people like me. For example, for me, I think if someone makes a racially inflammatory remark, it really depends on what kind of remark it is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so let me come back to you and say that if it is inflammatory in your view, and it is false, it is false and it's inflammatory by your criteria, what would you do? Would you publish that?
Oh, if it's sent to me? No, of course not.
Okay, and then if you published it, and you were confronted with evidence that this is false and this is,
I think
what
we
would
have.
you do? And it satisfies your
Yes.
criteria.
I think when I was with TOC, we had a process within TOC for religious and racially sensitive articles. And that's why I think if you look at the first 9 years, 7 to 9 years that I was with them, we never had such articles, simply because there was a process. And in later years, we ran such articles through lawyers. So we are very careful, But if it's something that is very inflammatory, and I would raise the example of, for example, Amos E., right? His second offense or rather it wasn't an offense at the time, but he did something on a video with a Bible. I shall not say what it is, but I found it utterly inflammatory and disgusting. But when I told friends about it, I was very surprised that some of them thought there's nothing wrong with it and that he should be allowed to do that and we should debate that. You see? So people have different thresholds, different, threshold of acceptance. Yeah.
But ultimately, someone has to decide whether it is bad
Yes,
for
of
the
course.
country and the public good.
Yes, of course.
And okay, so who do you think should decide? Because I think yesterday your former colleagues were saying that we should just let people decide. I think.
I think ultimately, right, it's the elected people, elected officials in Parliament who have to decide. I think nobody can argue with that. But the question is, how big a threshold should Parliament have on these sort of things? And I would argue, as did Dr. Gillian Cole, that we should allow, public debate on sensitive issues like that. If there is no immediate, to use the words of Professor Tan just now, clear and present danger, right? The worry is that whatever legislation that the government might come out with will be focused on deterrence, on the preemptive strike. Right? And that to me is most worrying, because a law, all laws are deterrent, I suppose, but if it's specifically targeted to dissuade people from putting out falsehood, right? I think that might have consequences that I hope the committee will consider.
Mr. Chairman,
In terms of,
can I just clarify that, Mr. Loh, I don't think there has been any statement by anybody, either during the Green Paper debate, the various public statements, all members of this committee, that the government is looking at any preemptive strike. Would you agree that formulation has not been used by us, and it is your presumption that it's...
No, actually, it was mentioned in Parliament by NMP. I think it was NMP Madhav Mohan. I have his...
Yes.
Yes. Yes, NMP Assistant Professor Madhav Mohan, he said in January 10 during the debate on the setting up of this select committee, he said preemptive measures, which is what the select committee would be thinking about.
No, I understand, Mr. Loh, but what I'm saying is that he was counselling not to have it. Yes?
Should be the main focus of legal solutions that we are putting together. This is what he said.
No, but you are saying that we should not have it. I'm saying that nobody has suggested that we are having it.
Yes, of course. I'm not suggesting that the select committee or anyone on the committee has said this.
Or the government has suggested
Yes,
this.
correct.
That
But
means you are presuming that it would be so, right? But we have not said that it would be so.
Yes, I'm not presuming.
Thank you very much.
I'm just saying that
yes.
it has been brought up in Parliament, and and therefore I would like to seek clarification.
But no one has put across that that is the intent.
Okay,
Thank you. I have no further questions.
thank you.
Mr. Tong?
Sorry, Mr. Loh, I just wanted to ask you to comment on something.
Sure.
In this ecosystem of DOFs, obviously there are those who carry the content, and there are those who prepare and post the content. You would agree that really for this to work, and you said it's got to be a everybody get involved approach.
Yes.
The people who produce the content have to be responsible.
Yes.
Agree?
Of course.
They have to be very clear with their facts, and I think they also have to be judicious in what they put out there and what they repost.
Yes.
Correct? And I think you have yourself been critical on some of these occasions. I just want to take you through some of your own posts to make the point. If I can just ask my colleagues to put up some of these posts from Mr. Loh, starting with the one on 1st of March 2016, which shows that I do read your posts.
Sometimes I do change my mind, though.
Well, let's see what you say about this one. So on the 1st of March, if you go to the top, yes, you say here, you made the point about the Straits Times comment, and you say, be very careful about third-party claims, check and check against always.
Yes.
That can't be something that you change your mind on, right?
Yes, of course.
It must follow that this is something that online media or even mainstream media, whichever media, has to be responsible for.
Yes.
Because you do have a duty to the reading public to make sure that your facts that you put out are correct.
Yes, of course. And also I would like to add that it's not always easy nor possible to check your fact and check again.
I take your point. I take your point. But nonetheless, I think at least on the occasion of this incident, you have made this point in the context of an article which you yourself believed to be misplaced criticism, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you go to the other one on 20th of March 2016, and this is about Bukit Batok and David Ong, and you say here, this is nonsense, it's not even an article, very disappointed with The Independent. A simple fact check would show that David Ong did in fact apologize. And that you said about this in the context of an article published on The Independent, which suggests that there was a lie that was being purveyed about Mr. Ong's apology, correct?
Yes.
So here, at least this episode illustrates that people do get facts very wrong out there online. But you say that a very simple fact check, at least in this case, would have cured the problem.
Yeah, there are some things that are easily fact checked, yes.
Yes. So not all facts are so difficult to check, correct?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. But there are also facts that are very difficult to check.
Yes, but you know, if you had done a simple fact check, as in this case, I think a very serious suggestion about an MP lying would not have pervaded the internet, right? So here's an example of something that can be done at very low threshold, simple fact check, but the consequences of not fact checking the fact, you have a very damaging and very clickbaity kind of headline, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And that's what this set of countermeasures should be designed to guard against, right?
Yes, but how do you do that? You don't do that through legislation.
I agree with you that
Yeah.
the how is not a simple issue.
Yes.
It I think will include legislation, speaking for myself, but obviously all the suite of other measures that we spoke about earlier will come into play. Now another one, 7th of June. And here you say, sorry, but you deserve to be slammed if you publish things without checking simple facts. Saying a minister gets free hospitalization without providing any proof is just plain laziness. Sigh. Please don't anyhow publish anything. You will discredit the alternative media. Again, it's not a view that you have changed from as well, right?
Yes.
You still hold to that view.
Yes.
And just one more recently, 3rd of September 2017, in the context of clamping down on fake news, you posted something and you said here, another reason for the government to clamp down on fake news. We only have ourselves to blame, to be honest. No longer can we point the finger entirely at the government. And this, I think, reflects your view that there must be ownership of the veracity of the articles by the people who post them and by the people who carry them.
Yes.
And I think this also reflects your sentiment that there is, in fact, some basis for the government to be concerned that such false news is being pervaded so easily on the internet.
I think, to be fair, because I know some of these sites and how they operate, very bad, I think PM Bauji once called us the flattest organization in Singapore because, everyone is doing all the work at the same time because we don't have resources.
But I think we agree at this outset that there is a responsibility and a duty to
Of
the
course,
public.
there is.
So if you feel that you are bare, then and not able to fact check simple facts as you say here, then don't publish. If you publish, I think there is a corresponding duty expected of the publisher and the content provider that you verify the facts. You would accept that?
I'm not sure what went on before they published the articles here. My reaction is from seeing, the article itself. There could be various reasons why they were not able to do, what was, what should have been done.
I understand.
Yes.
And your comments here reflect your own view that a very simple, low-threshold fact check would have cured all these problems.
For this particular
For these posts
cases,
that I've showed you.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Loh.
If there are no further questions, Mr. Loh, I would like to thank you for taking the time to participate and to contribute to our select committee process. In a couple of days, we will send to you a transcript of today's proceedings. Do go through it, and if you have any minor amendments, please make the changes and send the transcripts back to us.
Okay, sure. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time here.